Jesus restores two men but is begged to leave? Let's find out why. So, welcome back to Bible Basics. Today we're going to be studying Matthew 8. So, in the last video, we read through Matthew 8, we went through some of the context, added some commentary. Today we're going to be studying a specific section of that. We're going to be breaking it down and then reading some different verses of the Bible, but focusing on this story. So, if you haven't seen the earlier videos, a little bit of history on Matthew, the author. He was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. He has a first account of Jesus. He'll quote the Old Testament frequently. So basically, he wrote this specifically for Jewish people to convince them that Jesus was the Messiah, but it can still apply to anyone to this day. In earlier chapters, we saw Jesus' early life and how he was tested, and then he preached his most famous sermon, which is Sermon on the Mount. All right, so we're going to be studying the Bible using the SOAP method. That stands for Scripture, Observation, Application, Practical/Prayer. In Scripture, you're going to be putting the verses that you're reading. So today we're doing Matthew 8:28 through 34. And then for observation, you kind of summarize what you just read and put in your own words. Application is how can you take what you just read and apply it to our own lives? And then P stands for practical/prayer. Practical is something you can physically do practically throughout the week. And then prayer is you pray something specifically based on what you read. All right, so let's read. We're going to read Matthew 8:28 through 34. Jesus restores two demon-possessed men. When he arrived at the other side in the region of Gardanes, two demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." He said to them, "Go." So they came out and went to the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town, and reported all this, included what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. So I just want to give some context onto what we just read as far as why were people pleading with him once he delivered those two demon-possessed men after they went to the pigs. So up until this time, Jewish people weren't allowed to eat pork, so pigs. This changes later in the Bible, but at this point in time, they weren't able to eat pigs. So the fact that they were breeding pigs shows their disobedience. So we're going to be reading Deuteronomy 14:8. Deuteronomy 14:8. The pig is also unclean. Although it has divided hoof, it does not chew the cud. You are not to eat their meat or touch their carcasses. In Deuteronomy, there's like a lot of sections of giving the Israelites what they can or can't do. And in that section, they're not allowed to eat pigs. So just the fact that they were breeding them and then they were hurting them shows that they're being disobedient and not listening to what they were told to do. But this does get changed later on, so there's no confusion. So I'll read Acts 10:15. This is after Jesus goes up to heaven, and this is kind of like the disciples continuing his ministry. We're about to read is one of the disciples. He was Jewish, and he said, "Oh, I've never eaten anything clean." Acts 10:15. The voice spoke to him a second time. "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." And basically, with that, is everything became clean again. So there wasn't any restrictions as far as what we could and couldn't eat. So I just wanted to clear that up in case there was any confusion. We can eat whatever we want, basically. In the observation, you summarize what we just read. So I put Jesus restores two demon-possessed men by putting the demons into pigs. The people of the town beg for him to leave. So for the application, I put God will take sinful things away from us. We'll get mad at God because we enjoy those sinful things, but God knows what's best for us. So just like those villagers where they were hurting those pigs, and then they get thrown down the ledge, where we're trying to live a better life, we ask God for Him to take those sinful things away from us, and they slowly start happening. And when it happens, we don't understand. We're like, "Why is this happening? I enjoy these things. Why are you taking them away from me?" But little do we know, in the long run, it will benefit us. Another thing I got from it too is, or we could even ask God to help us to get closer to Him, and that's how He'll respond. So an example I like to use is patience. So I've been praying for patience, but how God works is He's not going to just give you patience just like that, where you're going to wake up one day to the next where you're patient now. He'll put you in situations where you'll have to learn to be patient. He'll put you in different scenarios, and then based on your response, you'll become more patient by how you respond to things that happen to you. So you could ask for God to remove some things for you, and then He does, and then we get mad at Him. But we just have to be patient and really understand that what He's doing for us is good, and also to understand where He's coming from, because sometimes we think very small minded where we just want things now instead of thinking things will take more of a process, being more patient and understanding of where God's coming from. And then I also wrote, in a relationship with God, there's a lot of push and pull, especially in the beginning. So if you've never been in a relationship with God, in the beginning there's a lot of push and pull where you want this, but you're not sure. It's like, I want to change this about my life, but I'm not sure. I want to know more about you, but I'm not sure. And there's a lot of back and forth. And once you find that sort of equilibrium, you'll be a lot better. But in the beginning, it's a lot of back and forth where God kind of challenges you to remove something from your life and you don't want to, or God changes something in your life and you don't want to, and you just kind of learning to adjust to it because you're kind of living for God now instead of living for yourself. And that takes a little bit of a transition. P is practical or prayer. Practical is something you can put into practice and actually do. So for that one, I put reflect on a time God took something away, but it worked out for me. I did do this actually, and what I got is I remember a few years ago, I was hanging out with some people I shouldn't have, and God took away those bad influences in my life. And at first, I was kind of sad because I enjoyed hanging out with those people. But then now, reflecting on it, I can see that God was doing something in my life and He was taking people away that were influencing me negatively. Not to say that I can't make my own decisions, but I was influenced by them. And then when I got them removed from my life, I could think for myself a little bit better. And I wasn't having that temptation anymore. And then prayer. So I put pray for God's understanding and trust even when things seem unfair. So for me, it's just to understand God a little bit more when things happen in my life and I'm not too sure why they're happening. I can just reflect, take a deep breath, take a step back, and then acknowledge that God is working and not to get frustrated in those moments, but to actually be appreciative that God is doing something in my life. And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this sort of format where we take the studying part into one video and then we take the reading into another. So I think it's just a better way to get more in depth. Feel free to do this on your own soap, your own observation, your application, your own practical, and see what you get. And if you feel you got something out of it, comment down below and I would love to discuss about it. Thank you so much.